In the last lecture, we set up our news article model, which is great, but now we need to make a network request so we are able to fetch all the top headlines from the news API. For this, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new folder, and I'm going to go ahead and call it services. Inside this, I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. We will call it web service. Let's actually go ahead and create it over here, not over here. Inside the services folder, I'm going to go ahead and create service.dart. Perfect. Now this webservice.dart file will be responsible for making a network request and then giving us the JSON information, the JSON result, and then also giving it to the news article so that we can actually get a news article instance back from the JSON result. The first question is that how are we going to make the network request? The good news is that it's not that hard to make a network request because there are a lot of different packages that are available that you can use. If you simply go to pub.dev website and search for HTTP package, which actually is listed right here, but if you even search for it, that's the first one that comes up. The HTTP package is going to allow you to perform a network request, and it is a promise-based API, so it's going to return you a promise that you can evaluate to get the actual data. But our first task is to actually install this particular package. So let's go to the installation or installing tab and simply copy the HTTP and the version number for that particular package. This is the library that we're going to install. Let's go back to our application. And now we can jump into pubspec.yaml file. And inside the YAML file, on line number 25, you can see that we are already using the Cupertino icons package. Just below that, we can simply paste HTTP package and go ahead and save it. Now, once you save it, it is automatically going to download. If you doesn't see that happening, then you can go to the terminal and you can say flutter packages get, and it will get all the packages that are listed right here in the pubspec.yaml file. So now we have the package installed, which is great. Now I can jump back to my web service and start implementing our services. So let's see how we can do that. The first thing we will do over here is to create a class. And I will go to call that class a web service class. You can obviously call it anything you want, but I'm just going to call it web service. Now inside the web service, I can actually go ahead and create some sort of a function, which is fetch latest headlines. Or we can even call this fetch top headlines. Top headlines. Perfect. Now, in order to use the HTTP package, I need to import it. So import, and we can use package. And now you can say HTTP package. So in order to use the HTTP package, you can actually, first let's go ahead and start importing. Import package. And you can see all these packages actually listed over here. All right. Now in one of those packages, you will see HTTP package, which is right here. I can select that and I will refer to that particular package in my application as HTTP. The second thing I need is some sort of a URL. So if I go ahead and create a string variable over here like URL, I can jump back and get the URL for the top headlines. Make sure that you are using your own API key because the one that I'm using might be disabled or inactive. So make sure you're using your own API key. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And that will be our URL. Perfect. Now we can start using the HTTP package. Let me go ahead and right click it and say format document. And then you can see that it actually formats the document nicely. And now we can go ahead and say http.get and pass in the URL. Perfect. Now this http.get function is going to return, as you can see, a future of response. So in order to evaluate that particular promise, we can do a .then. But a better idea would be to simply use the power of async and await functions. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to await for that promise to be evaluated. Once it is evaluated, it's going to be returned to response object. Unfortunately, we cannot use await unless and until our function is marked with async. So let's go ahead and mark this function with async. And now you can see that we can actually start using the await. We're going to await for this promise to be resolved, and then we will get the response. The response is an object, and it will have different properties. One of that property is status code. If the status code is 200, meaning the response was good, then we can do something over here. Else, if the response was bad, then we can actually go ahead and throw an exception saying that failed to get top news, or any other exception that you want to throw. Now, after getting the response and a successful response, we want to go ahead and decode the body of the response. So for that, we can simply call JSON.decode, or sorry, JSON.decode function, which is JSON decode, and simply going to pass in the response.body. This is going to return us some sort of a result. Now, looking at the actual response, you can see that we are not mainly interested in the status or the total results. We're actually interested in the articles. So articles is a key, and the value of the articles is an array of articles. So at this particular moment, the result represents everything. So we need to get the articles out of the results. So I can go ahead and say result of articles, and I can move it into an iterable list. We're making it iterable because we want to iterate through the articles, because articles is going to return you an array of dictionaries. Now we can go ahead and say return list.map. We're going to map over it. We're going to get back every item, which is an article. You can actually call it article if you want to. So we can say article. And now we can use news article dot from JSON function that we implemented earlier on, pass in the article, and finally call to list. Now we need to go into line number 8, where we have declared our function, which is fetch top headlines, and we want to return a future of list of news article. And now you can see it works correctly. The reason that we are returning a future is that we have marked our function with async. This means that it has to return a future. Now, if our function was returning nothing, then we will simply go ahead and say future of void. But since our function is returning something, we're going to say future of list of news article. Great. So this is going to do it for our web service and our fetch top headlines. Now, in order for everything to be displayed on the screen, we have to work on creating the news article list as well as the news article view models. You have already learned about what exactly is a view model. Once we get the information, this function fetch top headlines will be called from a view model, which is going to get access to a list of all the articles and then convert it into view models, which can eventually be displayed on the screen. So let's go ahead and learn about how we can start creating our view models in the next lecture. It's time to now create our view models associated with our application, and we'll be creating two different view models. One will be news article list view model, and the other will be news article view model. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I would call it view models. This is where I will keep all of my view models. Let's go ahead and add a new file, and I will call it news article list view model.dart file. And I will also go ahead and create another model, which will be a news article view model dot dart. Now, the first question you might be thinking is, why are we creating two different models? The news article list view model is going to describe the complete screen where you will display all the top headlines. And each article of that particular screen will be identified by news article view model. So that's why this kind of separation or nesting that we are going to do. So we'll go ahead and get started with the news article view model. And news article view model will be based on the news article model. This means that we are going to go ahead and create a class which will be called news article view model. And in order to create the news article view model, you should pass in the news article, which we'll get over here as news article. So this means that we can create a news article view model constructor, and in order to do that, you need to pass in the news article so that we can create a news article view model. The news article view model will also have some other properties like title, which will simply go ahead and return the news article.title. The other thing that it will have is the description also. So we can go ahead and say description. And in this case, we will also have the news article.description. Now, since we don't really want the news article instance, the model actually, to be noted outside, we can put underscore with this particular model so that it is only available inside this particular file, inside this class. As soon as you do that, you're going to see that it is start complaining. Because if this is underscore represents a private field, and if it is a private field, it cannot be changed by simply passing it from an outside constructor, which is available publicly. So how can we fix this issue? We do want our news article to be private, because the only thing that we are exposing from the news article view model is the title, description, URL to image, and URL and other stuff, but not the actual instance of the model. So how can we resolve this issue? One way to resolve this issue is simply go ahead and say that we will be taking a news article as article, and once we get that, we can actually go ahead and say news article equals to article. So what we have done is we have been taken a news article as a public field, a variable, and we simply assign it to a news or underscore news article on line number 9. This works, and this is great, and this is all we wanted. Let's go ahead and complete all of this stuff. We're going to go ahead and create something called image URL, which will be a underscore news article dot URL to image. We can also go ahead and create a property, which is URL, and this is going to return us the news article dot URL. Perfect. So this has created us a news article view model, which represents a particular news article. But if we want a list of articles, we can go ahead and go into the news article list view model, which is going to represent a list. So let's go ahead and create that. So I'm going to go ahead and say news article list view model. Now, the other reason that we are creating a separate class for news article list view model is that we want our screen, our page, to have a little bit more flexibility so that we can add search bar and segmented controls and other stuff. And if we are using news article list view model, this is completely representing the whole screen where we'll be displaying the top headlines. This will have a property which will be called the news article view model, the one that we just created earlier on. We will refer it to by articles, and now we can go ahead and create that news article view model. Great. Now the news article list view model will also have some functions for sending or populating the top headlines. It will also have some functions for searching and so on. But this is the basic architecture of our view models. We will use two view models, news article list view model, which is going to represent the complete screen where we will display all the top headlines, and a news article view model, which will represent each row of that screen so that it can be represent the news article, which consists of the title, description, image URL, and URL. Now, news article list view model, which is our parent view model, currently does not really have any function for populating the top headlines or searching and things like that. So let's go ahead, and in the next lecture, we are going to find out that how we can implement the change notifier, how can we implement our functions that will be responsible for getting the top headlines. So let's go ahead and learn that in the next lecture. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a function that is going to be responsible for populating the top headlines. The first thing we need some sort of access to the web service, and we need a function. Now we already have access to the web service because the web service is implemented in web service class. That's great. So now we can actually go ahead and create our functions. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function called populate top headlines. Great. I'm going to go ahead and make this a public function. And inside this function, I'm going to also say that this is an async function because we will be calling the web service. So let's go ahead and call web service dot fetch latest headlines. We're going to await for the result because this is a promise. And we're going to get eventually in a list of news article, not the news article view model, just the news article. So now we can say news articles. Let's go ahead and add this, which is actually inside the news article.dart file. Great. So the populate top headlines function is going to go ahead and call the service fetch top headlines. Hopefully it's going to return us all the articles, but currently the articles that we will get are models, and we need to go through these articles and we need to map them so that we can get access to the news article view model, because that is something that we want to give it to the user interface. Your model should not be talking to the interface. The model is a domain model, it contains all the logic, and it shouldn't be talking to the interface. For the interface, we have to create, or we have already created, the news article view model, and that is the one we'll be using to give to the interface so that the interface can then display all of those different things. So let's go ahead and iterate through news articles, which are a list of models. We're going to go ahead and map over it. We get access to each article. And using each article, we can go ahead and call news article view model, which is this one, and passing in the article, which will be the article. And finally, we can call to list so that to convert it to a list. We're going to go ahead and get all this information into this.articles, which is a list of news article view model. Great. So after doing that, we need to notify the user interface that we got it. We have fetched all the articles. Now you can use these articles to display it on the screen or refresh the old screen so we can see the new articles. But how do we do that? In Flutter, in Dart, you can actually use something called a change notifier. Now the change notifier is a class that you're going to use, which makes your model notify of changes to the UI or whoever is listening. The only thing is that you have to call the function which is notify listeners. Now this is obviously only the one side of the story, which means that we are calling populate top headlines. This is performing some sort of a async operation, and we are eventually populating our property, which is this sort articles. After we are 100% sure it is populated, we're calling notify listeners. But on the actual user interface, you have to use change notifier provider so that the change notification are provided for those controls. So right now, our news article list view model is done. It should be fetching all of these different things, but we still need to go and update our interface so we can get all that information being displayed. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that in the next lecture. If you want to learn how to create amazing Flutter applications using MVVM design pattern, then check out my course Flutter and Dart Build Apps using MVVM design pattern. This is a 9+ hour course, and it's going to start by explaining to you what exactly is MVVM design pattern, and immediately going to jump into some amazing projects like the news app where you will fetch the information from a JSON API, the Pathfinder application, which is going to integrate with Google Maps and Google Places to let you know of good restaurants near you, then the City Care application, in which you can take pictures and you can even upload pictures to your custom server. And finally, we're going to jump into Hacker News application, where you will integrate with the Hacker News public API and display all the Hacker News along with their comments. I even added the source code for some of the clone apps that we will be doing: the Apple Stocks app, the Apple Weather app, the Apple News app, and the Apple App Store app. This is an amazing course, and this is a little bit of an intermediate to an advanced course. So if you are a complete beginner, I don't really recommend this course for you. There are other courses out there, but if you have already passed that beginner stage, this is the next step for you. Now, the best way to get this course is check out the YouTube description, and you will find the link to the Flutter and Dart course. Click on the link and get the course. You will get the best price, and to be really honest, I'll get to keep a little bit of a higher revenue if you use my links. So thank you so much, and I can't wait for you to join this course.